Welcome to the Journey Podcast, where we share some of the most inspiring stories on the planet, life lessons, and tools that will help you navigate through your own personal journey. On this episode, you will find a segment from our weekly life coaching platform, the Dream Nation Breakfast Club. Feel free to tune in live on Zoom every Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern via dnbreakfastclub.com. I am your host, Josh Valentine. Welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh Valentine, and I am the official host of the Dream Nation Breakfast Club, where we gather every single Tuesday morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern. So always a pleasure being here with you all, and we're about to get this show on the road. Shout out to everybody who's tuning in from different cities all around the world. Shout out to everybody tuning in from the West Coast. You guys are 4 a.m. on that side of the world. So much respect to everybody getting up early this morning. And of course, everybody across the pond who is tuning in and it's afternoon or maybe evening on your side of the world. Welcome. Today we have a really great session lined up for you all. All right. So let's see here. Drop a Y in the comment thread if you guys can hear me and see me okay. Just drop a Y. I want to make sure you guys can hear me. See, we got Florida in the house. We got Jamaica. We have New York City tuning in. Boston. Awesome. All right. Let's get this show on the road. If you don't mind, drop over to Facebook, even if you're on the Zoom, and just drop a like. Or comment or tag someone who can get value. But Grand Rising, everyone. Excited to be here with you all as always. And Breakfast Club morning, I usually wake up right around 5 a.m. I'm not sure what time you guys woke up this morning, but I like to kind of get myself acclimated before serving this amazing community that I've been serving now for over 8 years. So it's always a pleasure being on here with you all. And I said we have some wonderful people who are tuning in with me this morning. And if you're wondering what in the world is this all about, who's this light-skinned brother with locks jumping on, talking right now? What did my brother, my sister, my uncle tag me in? If you don't know, the Breakfast Club, I've been hosting now for over 8 years, like I mentioned, and essentially, it's a life coaching platform where we gather up as a community every single Tuesday, and it's my way of helping people kind of navigate through their week. I know for some people, Tuesdays can be a little bit daunting if you, let's say, work a job that you don't necessarily love. And a lot of people are in desperate need these days of just a community that is uplifting, that is positive, that is centered around just healing and transformation and everything that could ultimately make your life better. So oftentimes we share different topics, anything that can help you navigate through your life. And in case you don't know as well, I am the host of the Journey Podcast. So you can find the Journey Podcast essentially on every single platform, every podcast platform out there, from Spotify to Apple Music to iHeartRadio. And even on YouTube, if you want to catch the podcast, we film our podcast sessions, and they're incredible. We have amazing interviews with some of the most incredible people on the planet. And it would mean the world to me if you guys also leave a review if you enjoy the podcast. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in on a consistent basis with me every single Tuesday morning. Today we're going to be covering a really great topic, and that topic is centered around something that I think we all kind of deal with on a consistent basis, and that's the idea of worrying and anxiety. So if you're like myself, and maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a spouse, maybe you're a community builder, whatever it is, I kind of wear all those hats, and I'm also an entrepreneur. And I would say that worry and anxiety are definitely something that a lot of us deal with, especially as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship kind of has this ability to strip you of your certainty from time to time. especially if you don't take control over your mindset, your perspective, or your attention. It can very well have you in a state of worry or an anxiety, or maybe you just kind of have a bunch of kids or people who are dependent on you, and you find yourself in situations where you're dealing with overwhelm, and it's just a lot on your plate. And I think that this Breakfast Club segment is going to be super valuable for you if you can relate to just dealing with any degree of anxiety, any degree of overwhelm or stress. This is going to be a really great session for you. And the topic of today's segment is 10 coping strategies to help with worry and anxiety. And I'm going to be covering a lot of evidence based or evidence backed information. So, all of these different things, I do extensive research typically before certain Breakfast Club sessions. So, a lot of these things are science backed. And if you follow my work, or maybe you've seen me on TV, I'm typically on NBC on a weekly basis. I'm talking about different things pertaining to life coaching, and you probably hear me reference a lot of science backed information. And I'm big on just research and actual practical things that have been tested, and sharing these things with our community to kind of help people's lives get a little better. So I know this information is going to be super valuable. And if you're a frequent guest of the Breakfast Club, oftentimes you'll hear me share certain things that are maybe a little bit repetitive. And that's because in the world of personal development, part of the personal development process is sharpening the saw, meaning that you have to constantly refine these things. You constantly have to go over them to really, really instill them in your subconscious. And I find that it's super helpful to not only learn this information, but also teach it. Just don't just take it with a grain of salt, or just take it and utilize it for yourself. If you truly want to embody a lot of this information, learn the information, practice the information, but also teach the information. I had someone recently ask me, how in the world are you able to remember all of these things that you talk about? And you think about it, I'm on here 2 hours every single week. That's a lot of information. That's at least 8 hours a month just talking about different topics. And what I had to explain to this brother who asked me, how do I remember all of this information? I explained to him that I simply not only practice it, but I also teach it. And because I teach it, what you vocalize, you ultimately internalize. So the more you talk about things that you learn, the more you teach these things and also put them into effect, the more you're going to be able to utilize them in your life, the more that they're going to stick. So, man, it's so crazy to think that we just started the year, and I feel like January is already flowing. Anybody feel like that? That January is just flying by, like we're already at the end of January and we just started this year. And guess what? I can almost guarantee you that a few months in, you're going to be saying that this year is flying by. Last year it happened for us as well. We kicked off the new year with New Year resolutions and all of these different goals that we set for the year. And next thing you knew, the year was just gone. The year flies by, and time just naturally flies by, especially as you get older, because typically what happens when you get older, it's not that time changes, but your perception of time changes. So you may find yourself as a child engaging in a lot of different activities. There's so many different elements to life, so much variety. Whereas when you get older, a lot of your life becomes monotonous. A lot of your life becomes routine. A lot of your life is just the same stuff every single day. So what happens is when you experience the same things every single day, it feels like time is flying because you don't really have that many distinctive memories as a reference point for time. It's the same thing over and over. So when you look back at your year, all that you really remember is the same drive that you took to work, the same typical work day, maybe the same turn up vibe that you had 50 times last year. So you need to fill up your life, if you want to slow down time, or not literally, not in the literal sense, but if you want to slow down time figuratively, you have to change the way you go about your life, meaning you have to stack your life with different things, different experiences, different memories that you create for yourself. That way, when you look back at your year, you're like, wow, I did so much this year. I did that, I did that, I did this. And your life feels full. It doesn't feel like you're wasting your life because you're engaging on a lot of different things. Now, this is not to say that if you're running a business to run 10 different businesses at once. This is to say, if you set your intention for this year, you can very well go on to do some incredible things. You have to set your intention for what you want to do. It's referred to as lifestyle by design. So, prime example, this year, with our Breakfast Club community and all of our communities, we're going to South Africa and Zimbabwe at the end of September. So you guys are more than welcome to join us. If you would like to go on our trip or you want some more information on our trip, send me a DM, hit me up. You can just comment the word trip in my DM. Even if you're listening to this on a podcast, if you're listening to this Breakfast Club segment on a podcast, hit me up on my social media. Just send me the word trip and I'll be more than happy to send you a voice note just on some information pertaining to our trip. But we're going to the motherland this year and I'm really excited about it. We're going to be taking about 100 people out there to Africa, South Africa, and then Zimbabwe. September 26th is when we're going to South Africa. And you'll have the option to extend the trip if you'd like, or if you just want to go to one country as opposed to two, you're going to have a lot of different options to work with. But the reason why I mention that is because when it comes to my year, oftentimes what I do is I'll set my intention for the year when it comes to not only business stuff, not only things that are centered around finances or work or just career related or relationship related, but also lifestyle related, the things that you want to experience this year. If you don't make, let's say, for example, travel a priority in your life, what will end up happening is something else will occupy those resources that you have. Something else will occupy that time that you have. So you have to be very intentional about planning these things for the year. What do you really want to do this year? And if you don't bring enough consciousness to it, if you don't bring enough attention to it, the likelihood of you actually doing it is very slim to none. So you have to nurture and give your time, energy, and attention to the things that you pretty much want to do for the course of the year. So maybe you want to elevate, let's say, when it comes to your career by getting certain certifications or something like that. And you want to enroll in a certification. You want to go to a seminar. You want to, let's say, get a coach or anything like that. You have to be very intentional about exactly what it is that you want. Clarity of intention equals power. The more crystal clear you are on what it is that you want, the more likely you are to follow through. But now, what do you do when you're in a space of just overwhelm? You're like, Josh, this all sounds great. This is amazing, but there's just a lot going on in life. And sometimes it feels a little bit overwhelming. If you all don't mind, drop a 1 in the comment thread if in the last year you've experienced any kind of anxiety or stress or overwhelm. Drop a 1 in the comment thread. I just want our community to know that they are not alone. I should be dropping a 1 in these comment threads because I go through it. I mean, even me with my work as a life coach, sometimes people think like, oh, you're a life coach. Of course, you got it all figured out. No, I don't think, I mean, not that I don't think, I know that depression does not discriminate. Anxiety does not discriminate. Overwhelm does not discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are, how much you think you've got it all figured out. You're going to go through a certain degree of discomfort, especially if you're someone who is on your path to whatever it is that you're pursuing when it comes to your dreams. So I was speaking at a seminar that we hosted this past weekend here in Tampa Bay, and one of the things that I spoke about was living on the edge of your comfort zone and what that actually looks like. So if you can envision a comfort zone sort of like a circle, and if you had to describe what life in the comfort zone looked like, if you guys don't mind, drop a comment in the comment thread on a description of what life in the comfort zone looks like. So when I thought about this, I always share this diagram when I start talking about the comfort zone at my events. And the diagram essentially has just all of the different elements of what the comfort zone looks like. So prime example, the comfort zone may look like laziness. So you just feeling lazy or apathetic, not really having the drive, the motivation. The comfort zone, ironically enough, is also uncomfortable because when you think about it, as comfortable as you think you are, you have this part of you that is nudging you. This part of you that's like a splinter in your mind, constantly reminding you that you're not doing enough. So then you get filled with all of this guilt. You get filled with this shame, with this regret. And I will be the first to tell you that as much as you think that you're living in your comfort zone, there's nothing comfortable about living in your comfort zone because the weight of regret is a heavy price to pay. The weight of regret is something that lingers in your mind, and you're constantly being reminded that you're not doing enough. You're constantly being reminded by your soul that you're not living up to your potential. And I'm not sure how many of you can relate to this, but I most certainly can. Sometimes I want to chill. Sometimes I want to just relax and watch some TV. But there's that part of me that's like, Josh, you can be doing more. You can be doing a lot more. You have so many different things that you can be doing right now to contribute to your dreams and your goals and your desires and your kick. And sometimes I must admit, I find it very difficult to just chill. But when you think about life in the comfort zone, complacency absolutely is a big one. When you think about life in the comfort zone, it's probably a lot of TV watching, a lot of scrolling through social media, and that's a big one. Think about how much you actually scroll time, whether it be TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. And if you don't have awareness of it, it will consume your life and it will occupy a lot of your precious energy that can be utilized for taking advantage of your situation and also taking yourself out of whatever situation you're in that you ultimately don't want to be in. So the comfort zone is also a justification. Sometimes reading a book on personal development and you're justifying your your personal development and you're saying, "Oh, yeah, it's okay that I'm not doing this business activity that I know I should be doing because I'm taking some time to build up my mind." Right? And we'll have this idea in our mind and I remember a life coach that I hired many years ago. She said, "You're hiding behind the personal development." And I remember that hit home for me because she was right. I was doing all this personal development, but really what I was doing was hiding behind the work that I knew that I should be doing. So I just want to encourage you guys to have the awareness of that when you're hiding behind the things that seem to be very uncomfortable. So when I talk about life on the edge, what I'm talking about is a life where you're doing things that you really don't feel like doing. You're doing things that you don't feel like doing, but you know is essentially right for you. You know these are things that can help you in your life, like going to the gym. Let's be real. The vast majority of people who go to the gym do not feel like going to the gym. The vast majority of people who are cleaning up their home do not feel like cleaning up their home, but they know they have to do it. The vast majority of people who are taking time to build their dreams, you don't always feel like doing it because maybe building your dreams looks a little bit like work and you'd rather just be chilling. So that's life on the edge. Sometimes life on the edge, what it looks like is you putting yourself in a space where you're taking a chance on you. And maybe you're going through a level up season. And I just want to let you guys know that if you feel very uncomfortable and you feel a little tired and you feel like you're on the edge, life hasn't been so comfortable because you're constantly doing things that are pushing you beyond your comfort zone. If that's the space that you're in, if that's the season that you're in, I just want to let you know that you're on the right path because life truly begins on the other side of your comfort zone. You have to break through that boundary. You have to get really good at doing hard things. Doing hard things, whatever that hard thing is for you. The way that I describe this process is doing things that you ultimately don't feel like doing, but that you know you should do. A great mentor of mine would oftentimes say that you want to do what you know, not what you feel. And that's up for debate because some people would say, go with your heart. And there are most certainly times in your life where that may be very valuable for you, going with your heart. But oftentimes, there are things that we know we should be doing, but we just don't feel like it because our body is trying to keep us comfortable. Our body is trying to keep us alive. It's trying to avoid discomfort. It's trying to avoid pain. So it's actually working against you in a sense. So that's why it's so important to take control over your body, take control over your mind, because your mind is this 2 million-year-old device that you have, this technology that you have within you that is ultimately designed to keep you alive. That's what your brain is here to do. That's what your body is here to do. It's built for reproduction and built for survival. So oftentimes you'll find yourself in a space where your survival mechanism is actually working against you. It's not working in your favor because your dreams require you doing a lot of things that are probably not natural to the body. It's not natural to reach out and willingly go through rejection. It's not natural to force yourself to wake up and go exercise. It's not like a natural thing to do. It's very uncomfortable because your body is saying, well, get a little bit more rest. You need the rest, or relax, take a break. You deserve it. And it's wanting to keep you safe. So you have to go through this process of ultimately, as David Goggins would say, becoming very uncivilized. You have to get very uncivilized when it's level up season. And this is level up season. For those of you who've been tuning in to the Breakfast Club consistently, I know that there's that part of you in your soul that's calling you to be more. There's that part of your soul that's calling for alignment. There's that part of you that knows that the next level is around the corner, but you just can't seem to get yourself beyond your edge. Or maybe even you can't even find yourself getting to your edge because it's a little bit scary. And maybe you're going through a lot of anxiety and overwhelm, and it's just a lot for you right now. So my hope is that today's session could really help you navigate through that. And I know that the tools you're going to pretty much learn today are going to be tools that can help you. And they're most certainly things that I've implemented in my life. And guess what? Even knowing all of these things, even you guys having all of these tools at your disposal, it doesn't mean that you're never going to go through any type of anxiety or stress or anything like that. Because guess what? For every level, there's a new devil. You're always going to have the next level come, and it's uncharted territory. And when you go into uncharted territory, your body and brain is looking for all the things that can go wrong. And that's why it's scary. But here's another takeaway. If your dreams don't scare you, they're simply not big enough. If your dreams don't scare you, they're simply not big enough, because the fear and the hard part is what essentially makes it an opportunity. Think about it. If everybody had your dream, if everybody already accomplished what it is that you're after, would you really have an appreciation for it? Would you even want the dream in the first place? Maybe your dream is to drive a red Lamborghini, and everybody on your block this week buys a red Lamborghini. Would you still want that red Lamborghini? What if maybe you want to build a certain business, and that business, everybody accomplished already what it is that you're after, and there's not really any significance around it because everybody has done it. The path to greatness is is a path where, they say it's lonely at the top. Really, I believe that the reason why that's mentioned is because at the top are very few people that were actually willing to do the hard things, to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So if you ever find yourself on the side of comfort, you should be very uncomfortable, because that means that you're stagnant. That means that you're not in a space of growth. That means that you're not at your edge. And at your edge is where life truly begins. That's a clear indication that you're on the right track. Okay, so let's jump a little bit into some Stoic philosophy shares here. This is a book called The Daily Stoic. So one of the things that have helped me sort of navigate through stress, anxiety, overwhelm has been Stoicism. Stoicism is the philosophy of the Stoics, the ancient Stoics, and you can trace this back to years and years and years ago, back to ancient Greece, and I believe Zeno from Cyprus is the originator of Stoicism, but ended up in Greece, and there were many schools of thought that taught on Stoicism, and it's a really great way to ultimately navigate through life. And a lot of Fortune 500 executives practice Stoicism, NFL coaches, a lot of high performance people, because it's a very practical philosophy that can help you get through life. And many times you guys will hear me talk about Stoic philosophy, because it's just one of those things. It's not like a weird, far out there pseudoscience kind of thing. It's a very practical way of going about life. And Stoicism in a nutshell is like the serenity prayer. And that's having the courage to ultimately change the things that you can control, and not really stress about the things that you can't, the things that are outside of your control, blessing and releasing the things that aren't in your control, and asking God, asking the universe for the divine strength or courage or motivation to be able to change your circumstances. So as we move forward here, I'm going to share with you two different days, two snippets from this book. The very first one is: the truly educated aren't quarrelsome. The beautiful and good person neither fights with anyone, nor, as much as they are able, permits others to fight. This is the meaning of getting an education: learning what is your own affair and what is not. If a person carries themselves so, where is there any room for fighting? Oftentimes I'll say fighting is ghetto, right? I grew up where there was always fighting going on, and it just wasn't it. And as I started to get around civilized environments, and environments that were filled with love and civility and decency and abundance, you started to see less and less fighting, and just being able to have a proper discussion about something, or to be able to even get to a space where you can agree to disagree and respect each other's boundaries. But to get into fights, like, let's be real, y'all, like, when you get to the highest levels of success, like fighting, it's fighting, but in a different way. You're fighting for your dreams, you're fighting for success, and perhaps just out there exuding your warrior spirit in the marketplace, but you're not getting into these petty little fights with people that are just a waste of time. Sometimes you have to put up a good fight if you're going through war in business or going through war with just things that you're going through on your path. But to get into those petty little arguments and things, like, I can tell you right now, I don't entertain, as we say in the Caribbean, we don't entertain foolishness. So, even in my household, we're not big on just fighting. Like, we may have these petty little arguments or disputes that are very short lived. It'll last a day and then it's over with, and we move on with our lives. And if an apology needs to be made, then an apology ultimately happens. But don't let these petty little fights consume you of your energy. You got much bigger fish to fry than to be out there getting into just these little disputes that are just not serving you in any kind of way. And that first snippet was from Epictetus on the book Discourses. Socrates famously traveled around Athens, approaching the people he disagreed with most and engaging them in long discussions. In these discussions, or what record we have of them, there were many examples of his conversation mates getting exasperated, upset, or aggravated by his many questions. Indeed, the people of Athens eventually got so upset they sentenced Socrates to death. But Socrates never seemed to get upset himself. Even when talking about matters of life and death, he always kept his cool. He was much more interested in hearing what the other person had to say than making sure he was heard, or, as most of us insist upon, winning the argument. The next time you face a political dispute or a personal disagreement, ask yourself, is there any reason to fight about this? Is arguing going to help solve anything? Would an educated or wise person really be as quarrelsome as you might initially be inclined to be? Or would they take a breath, relax, and resist the temptation for conflict? Just think of what you could accomplish and how much better you would feel if you could conquer the need to fight and win every tiny little thing. So this really hits home for me because sometimes I have to catch myself. I can be a contrarian to a certain degree, and this contrarian spirit of mine will oftentimes find myself in debates or just a lot of these heated discussions about certain topics. And sometimes it's not even worth entertaining. So for those of you who lead other people, it's important to just be mindful that, hey, sometimes these arguments or these little petty disputes, it's just so much better to just let the person have it and have it in the sense of not entertaining it. And if they need to win the conversation or win the argument, some people are very argumentative and always feel like they have to win. And sometimes I find myself in that space. And there are just many situations where it is absolutely not worth it, especially when they come from a very biased standpoint. I recently got into this debate and I realized that it was a losing battle because some people are just so fixated on their beliefs that there's nothing that can sway them. So it's not really worth your time. So whenever you find yourself in a debate with someone or arguing with someone, it's important to find out from the very beginning if this person is even open-minded enough to change their perspective or alter their perspective. So next up, we have the wise don't have problems. This is why we say that nothing happens to the wise person contrary to their expectations. Seneca. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this word correctly, but I believe it's Hesiod. It's spelled Hesiod. Hesiod the poet said that the best treasure is a sparing tongue. Robert Greene considers it a law of power. Always say less than necessary. We talk because we think it's helping, whereas in reality, it's making things hard for us. If our spouse is venting, we want to tell them what they should do. In fact, all they actually want us to do is hear them. In other situations, the world is trying to give us feedback or input, but we try to talk ourselves out of the problem, only to make it worse. So today, will you be a part of the problem or part of the solution? Will you hear the wisdom of the world or drown it out with more noise? And this is very, very valuable for so many different reasons, but I like the idea of being part of the solution and being solution oriented. Sometimes you find yourself in these petty disputes or debates where the people that are involved in this are not solution oriented, and all they're doing is talking about the problem, and it's just overkill. It's exhausting. It's not solving anything. So whenever you find yourself in this space, be sure to make sure that every single body who's engaging in this altercation has a solution oriented mindset. Okay, so again, I just want to rephrase the quote earlier for those of you who missed it. This is why we say that nothing happens to the wise person contrary to their expectations. So super, super valuable. Now, getting into the meat and potatoes of what it is that we'll be sharing here today, which is going to be 10 different ways that you can ultimately, um, help would deal with worry and anxiety and all of these different things. And take notes if you can, because this is going to be super, super valuable for a lot of you all. And if you guys don't mind, drop a comment in the comment thread on something that brings you anxiety, something that brings you worry. And it's so crazy because over 90% of what we worry about are things that never even happen. You ever notice that? Over 90% of the things that we worry about never even happen. And it's like we wasted all this time, energy, and our attention on worrying. And these things are just, it's like they say fear is an acronym for false expectation appearing real. So these things are things that we're wasting so much time and energy on and attention on, and they ultimately just never even happen. So what if you can teach yourself to eliminate the worry? Because what happens when you worry, you're amplifying what you're focusing on. What you focus on expands in your life. So if you're constantly in a space of worry, you get more worry. You ever notice that people who worry a lot, they tend to just be addicted to the worrying? Like everything that you hear them speak of are things that they're worrying about. It's because they have these patterns that they've been following, and this has become their emotional home in a sense. We all have an emotional home. So people who are very hopeful and optimistic and positive tend to live like that because that is their pattern of behavior. That's the way that they go about life. But then the people who worry, or the Johnny Raincloud type of people, the Debbie Downers, they're always talking about a situation that they're going through, something that they're worrying about, something that's out in the future that they have a lot of anxiety around. And if you don't catch it, if you don't have awareness of this, you can find yourself in that trap as well. So the other day, as I was doing my meditation, oftentimes when I'm doing my meditation, I'll have this mantra, and it's a mantra asking God, how may I serve? How may I serve? How may I serve? And this helps. I know sometimes people ask, how do you deal with all the thoughts? A lot of people struggle with meditation because they don't know how to control their thoughts. They feel like they're not able to really focus, and they have what they call in Eastern tradition as monkey mind. And that's just a lot of different thoughts coming at once. And I would encourage those of you who have attempted to meditate. And when I talk meditation, guys, it ain't meditation. It doesn't even have to be even spiritual in a sense. It can very well just be a mindfulness exercise where you calm your mind down. A lot of doctors recommend meditation for a reason because it lowers your cortisol levels that cause you that stress. It brings you into a space of equanimity where you're peaceful and you're not so flustered about life. But I know a lot of people, they struggle with it because they feel like they have so many thoughts that are coming, and it's not as beneficial as they would like for it to be. But the way that I look at meditation for my own personal life is I have two aspects of the way that I communicate with God. One is speaking to God, one is listening to God. And maybe you believe in the universe, God, whatever it is your thing. But prayer is ultimately an active process where you may be speaking to the creator, right? But with meditation, it's more a listening, because you can't speak and listen at the same time. If you're speaking, that is a thought that is happening, that's being expressed outwardly. And when you're listening, it's you downloading, in a sense, what's coming to you. So you literally can't do both at the same time. If you're like, try speaking right now and also listening. It just doesn't work. That's why it's so important when people are speaking to you to genuinely be processing what they're saying, because two thoughts cannot occupy the mind simultaneously. So I look at one process as speaking, one process as listening. And it's very difficult sometimes to listen because your mind has so many different thoughts that are happening. So one of the ways that I go about my meditations is I have a mantra. And the mantra, oftentimes the one that I like to use is, how may I serve? How may I serve? How may I serve? And it's interesting because in the process of stating these mantras, you have these gaps. And that's the void. That's where the thoughts start to seep in. And when you have a mantra, oftentimes these thoughts are influenced by the mantra. So if you're asking, how may I serve? You're a lot more likely to get a download, if you will, of answers to that question. And sometimes I'll even ask God, like, to show me your will, because we have our plan for our lives, but God ultimately has his plan. And what I want to do is seek alignment, in a sense. There's my pastor oftentimes, he'll say that prayer is not necessarily there for, it's not something that's there for request. A lot of people treat prayer like a genie in the bottle. Like, okay, all right, here we go, God. This is I want the nice home. I want the car. And I know some of y'all are probably justifying it by saying, oh, well, scripture says, ask and it shall be given to you, right? I get that. But you have to be very mindful at the fact that you have your will and then you have God's will. And that's why there's this Russian saying that man makes plans and then God laughs, because your will may be the will of the flesh and God's will is the will of the spirit. And they're two different wills. And you ultimately want to get in alignment with it, because your creator really knows what's best for you. Your creator is the Alpha, the Omega, knows the beginning, the middle, the end, knows everything that is going to happen, everything that has happened. So why would you trust your own insight that may very well be influenced by the flesh or your desires or something that was programmed into you by society? So it's not so much praying for requests, it's praying for relationship. That's the idea. That's where the greatest value lies, is when you can pray and meditate for relationship with your creator, for alignment, for guidance on the next step. That's the idea. And I'm just a firm believer that my creator wants to prosper me. My creator wants the best for me. So rather than just going with my own thinking, I'm asking, how may I serve? Show me your will. And in those gaps, in those empty spaces of the void, that's where the divine insight comes. And then I'll ultimately get a download that's like, okay, teach the people about dealing with stress. Teach the people about managing their finances. Give the people guidance on this. And that's how I go about the process. Oftentimes, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about, but I think of some of the greatest pain points, some of the greatest sources of suffering in the world today. And I know that anxiety, worry, stress, overwhelm, this is something that's universal and it's older than Earth. This is something that people typically have because it's a survival mechanism. Okay, so moving forward, here we go. we have 10 coping strategies to help with worry and anxiety. Number one, take a mindful relaxation break. You may be going through a state of anxiety because you are burnt out and you need to change what it is that you're thinking about. You have to change what you're focusing on, and you are burnt out. And you need to take some time to just get your mind off of what you currently have going on. And sometimes just doing something that you really love to do can be super beneficial with that. Something like think of things that you enjoy. It may be going to the beach. It may be reading a book. It may be even watching a movie. Sometimes for me, one of the ways that I unwind is I watched a football game. This was the first full football game. Well, last week actually as well. Our Tampa Bay Buccaneers, um, excuse me, our Tampa Bay Buccaneers went to the playoffs for the fourth time in the last 4 years this season. So I wanted to just get immersed in the Tampanian experience. Football is a big part of the culture out in Florida, so I wanted to just be a part of it. And many of you know that I played football for about a decade of my life. I played for at the NCAA level, and it's been a big part of my life. So I said, you know what? I don't really watch football, but when the big games are on, I watch it. So that was my moment to sort of get my mind off of things and do something that I really enjoyed. And I, hung out with some friends and watched a game, and it was a really great experience. And for you, it may be very well like watching a movie, but you have to have boundaries on this because you don't want to find yourself in a space where now you're putting so much time into things that aren't really helping your situation. So have boundaries around it. Perhaps you can take an hour at the end of your day to unwind and do something that you really enjoy to get your mind off. What I also do is I take Sundays to really just not do any work and get in tune with my family, my spirituality, relaxation, self-care, that kind of thing. So yes, and shout out to Champa Bay. We didn't go all the way this year, but it's all good. We got a chip. We gave the Detroit Lions major shout out to the Detroit Lions. You guys are very deserving of. I hope you take it all the way. Very deserving of the Super Bowl this year. It's been long overdue. So yeah, but shout out to Tampa on a great season. Number two, we have write down your worries. And I thought this one to be interesting. I never really thought to write down my worries. And as I was doing some research on coping with stress and anxiety and worry, I came across this and I actually did it. I wrote down the things that I was worried about. And I know for most people, typically what you worry about is your finances. So you worry about not being able to pay for certain things. And I know in business, I have all these worries that come about where, well, what happens? There's a lot of uncertainty, again, in entrepreneurship. And sometimes you have worries about the economic landscape or the marketplace and just changing times. Business is very cyclical. So those worries come about from time to time. Another thing is in entrepreneurship, you have to build your paycheck. There's no paycheck that's handed to you like a typical W-2 job. You have to build your own paycheck. So sometimes you get the worry of, well, what if the money doesn't flow in? What if I don't land those new clients? What if I don't get that new business? So many of you who probably work commission-based things, that may be a worry for you as well, but it's not really useful. So the worrying is not really useful. It's important. It's necessary for your survival mechanism, because imagine if you were just very nonchalant, you probably wouldn't get things done. I know my company, Dream Nation Media, has been built on the back of my worry. So at moments just like, I got to pivot, I got to make some changes here. And that is what fueled me to take action. So don't judge the worry. Don't be upset at yourself or beat up on yourself because you're constantly in a state of worry. that means that it's important. It matters to you. And sometimes out of the state of worry is where you have the fuel to be able to take action. So that's a big part of it. But write down your worries and the things that are most pressing for you right now and concerning. And this is a very therapeutic process. And when you write it down, it kind of takes the worry out of you and puts it outside of you. And you can come at the worry from a very pragmatic and objective standpoint. And that's the idea. Number 3 is learn your triggers. So one of the things that I noticed about worry, for example, there are times throughout the year where I have big expenses. So there are many things that I do with my business portfolios and things like that. And I remember when there were a lot of challenges in business, certain times where I had to pay big deposits towards something, the time frame around that would trigger me. Like I wouldn't worry all month long, and then when that big payment was coming up, I had this natural inclination to lean towards worry. Can anybody relate to that? Where you start to have the worry. There's a specific time, a specific environment that you start to worry. Maybe you get triggered when your spouse says something to you and you have a lot of uncertainty about your relationship. Maybe you get triggered when you see something on the news and now you get a little worried. But what are your triggers? Find out, when is it that you worry the most and where is it that you worry the most? What I find is I'm typically I'm typically at home. It's interesting. I'm at home when I get into a state of worry, and I'm usually in a space where I'm very comfortable. I'm just chilling, and I start to feel like, oh, I need to be doing more. And then it's usually when like it may be a season where I'm getting close to something that I really have to pay for, or maybe I just made a big purchase. And I come from an environment growing up. I grew up in the hood. I grew up in a very toxic environment. And not to knock my parents or anything, but this is what we were dealt with. And I was born into an environment that was always based on survival. So there are certain things that are triggered from trauma of growing up in those environments. So that's why it is important to identify when you are getting triggered, because a lot of what's triggering you is predicated on probably trauma that still hasn't been healed, wounds that still haven't been healed from your past. Very important to understand. Number 4 is practice breathing techniques. So this can be super valuable for you in a lot of ways. One of the breathing techniques that I do, and breathing techniques is really a way to kind of stabilize yourself, get yourself in a space of homeostasis, in a sense, where your body is not in a sympathetic nervous state, but a parasympathetic nervous state where it's calm. You're in that space of equanimity. You're on an even keel, if you will. And it's important to take control over your breath, because when you're in a space of anxiety and overwhelm, guess what? There are breathing patterns that mirror that feeling. So the breathing patterns, they may be very shallow or maybe short breaths, and your breathing is also influencing your emotions. So one of the fastest ways to get yourself out of a space of anxiety is just to calm your nervous system down by doing breathing exercises. And there's so many that you can do. The one that I recommend the most is typically the breathing exercise that I call the 4-count breath. And that's breathing in for 4 seconds, holding your breath with full lungs for 4 seconds, then exhaling for 4 seconds, and then holding your breath on empty lungs for 4 seconds. And you do this 4 times, and you'll find that you feel a lot better as a result of doing that. Now, to complement my breathing techniques, one of the things that I oftentimes do is what's referred to as the tapping method. So the tapping method is super valuable as well. You guys may have heard me mention it before on the Breakfast Club, but if you understand Chinese acupuncture, if you've ever seen how Chinese acupuncture works, you'll see that the acupuncturist will perhaps put a pin in one part of your body and it affects another part of your body. Or you'll see that something is connected to another. Your whole body is interconnected. So ultimately, the way the tapping method works is they discovered that there are specific meridians in your body that if you tap on them for a few seconds, there are about 8 of them that I know of. So one of them is on the side of your hand, and you can just tap right there, very subtle, very gently. And then you have at the brim of your eyebrow, at the very edges of your eyebrow, close to your forehead, and then at the side of near your temples, you can just tap on there for a few seconds. It sounds crazy, but it actually works. And there are a lot of schools now that are teaching this to children to help them cope with stressful situations. Then you have underneath your eye, underneath your nose, and on top of your lip, directly underneath your bottom lip, and on top of your chin, then on your collarbone, then on the pretty much a 4 fingers width distance from your armpit, right underneath your armpit, you tap right there, and then at the crown of your head. And I usually complement this with breathing exercises and affirmations. So you can say affirmations like, I feel so empowered, I feel so full of joy, I feel so full of love, and then do some breathing exercises with the tapping method. Sometimes I have situations that I'm going through in business that it's so much going on that I have to rely on all of them. And I'm bringing out all of my tools, all of my strategies, and even enhancing it with meditation, with prayer, and all these different things. So again, you can find out what works for you, but these are just a few techniques or strategies that you can implement to really help you get yourself in a calm state. Okay. Next up, we have number 5, change your language or perspective. So typically what happens when people start to worry, they're using certain language. They're saying, "Oh, I'm just so nervous about this situation," or "I don't know how this is going to go," or "I'm so fearful or so scared," or I'm so worried about, these situations. And you're vocalizing this, and what you vocalize you internalize, and you're constantly saying these things, and your words can become self-fulfilling prophecy. So you have to be very careful about the language you use. Sometimes we use language that also amplifies the emotion. So you may say that you're so scared of this happening, or you're so worried, and perhaps changing the language to make it so that it's not as intense, right? And language is directly tied to meaning as well, and the meaning you give to a situation. So you could very well just change your perspective on it. So one of my mentors, he'll oftentimes say when he has challenges, finally a worthy opponent. And it's his way of taking control over the situation, taking control over the narrative, and really stepping into his power. And I really resonated with that statement. Finally, another worthy opponent. And it's so essential for so many different reasons to be mindful of what you're saying. And you never want to say something about yourself or your situation that you don't want to be true. So your words, again, they play a big part of it. And be mindful of what comes out of your mouth and the meaning you give to a situation, because that meaning may not necessarily be truth or all of the truth. So do yourself a justice by giving meaning that's actually very useful for you. And maybe you're going through obstacles, but you shift your perspective and say, well, if I'm going through obstacles, that may be a clear indication that I'm on the right track. That may be a clear indication that I'm living life on the edge. I'm going for greatness here. I'm not going for conformity. I'm not going for complacency. I'm not going for apathy. I'm not going for just chilling. I'm on the path of greatness. And on the path of greatness, we go into uncharted territory. and uncharted territory, guess what? My brain and my body, they're going to try to keep me safe. And that's the resistance that you go, but the hard makes it an opportunity. The hard is what makes you grow. The hard is what builds your character. All of these different statements are timeless truths, things that are incontrovertible. You can't debate the fact that obstacles don't make you grow. You can't really debate that. I think we all have this universal understanding and agreement on obstacles help you grow. Every time that you've grown the most in your life, chances are you probably grew because of some obstacle that you had to overcome. Every time you became wiser, it probably came from an obstacle. Every time you've accomplished something great, it was a series of you doing hard things. It was a series of you doing things that required you going through resistance, that required you going into unfamiliar environments or situations. So embrace it and honor your body and thank your body for even having the ability to keep you alive. And say, look, I get you're scared. I get you're a little nervous here. I get you got a lot going on and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. Thank you. But right now, I'm putting my soul in the driver's seat. Too many of you have your body and mind in the driver's seat, and that's why you're not going in the direction that you need to go. Let your body and mind fuel you. Put it in the gas tank, put your soul in the driver's seat, and you'll be all right. It's like your ego. Your ego's in the driver's seat. Guess what? That is the fastest way to head towards a destination of self-sabotage. But if you put that ego in the gas tank, it can be some pretty good fuel and it can really give you the motivation to take action. But you always have to keep the soul in the driver's seat because the soul knows what's best for you. Next up, we have number 6. And if you're getting value from this, drop a V in the comment thread. I want to make sure that you guys are with me here. You're getting value from this so far. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. I see the V's coming in the comment thread. Nice. All right. So number 6, we're halfway through. Shift your focus to something else. Shift your focus to something else. Simple as that. And I know for me, this is by far one of the biggest things that help me. Like it is one of the things that have the greatest value. Because when I'm in a state of worry, oftentimes it's because I'm thinking about all of these different scenarios that are probably never even going to happen, that are most likely not even going to happen. This isn't even up for debate. Let's be real. How many of you have had times in your life where you just worried and worried and worried? Would you agree? Drop a Y in the comment thread if you would agree that over 90% of the things you worried about in your life, over 90%, never even happened. Never even happened. Drop a Y. Think about it. Over 90% is a big, big number. Don't drop a Y if you don't mean it. But over 90%, look at all the Ys coming in the comment thread. And it ain't do nothing but cause you all kinds of stress, all kinds of overwhelm, making you sick, making your body pretty much receive dis-ease, because that's what's happening. When you worry, when you're in a state of stress, you have to understand that your body is going into fight or flight mode. And when your body's in fight or flight mode, your cortisol level goes up, your adrenaline and the epinephrine and all these different things that are there to get you to either fight or flight. And when that happens, your immune system gets compromised. Your immune system shuts down. And we live in this state every single day. It's not natural for us to worry as much as we worry. But we're living in this state every single day. There's no coincidence as to why cancer rates and chronic illnesses and all of these different diseases and ailments are so prevalent in our culture. Because we live in a culture that is a very toxic and sick culture. It's a culture that promotes competition and promotes just always working and grinding and chasing and not enough on self-care, not enough on preservation, not enough on being in tune with nature, not enough on being at one with your family. Like, you don't really hear these things being spoken about enough. So there are certain things that you can do with your life. Like, for example, eating family meals. Do you know that there are statistics that show that a child who sits with his family or her family at least 3 times a week for family meals, it drastically reduces their depression, suicidal thoughts. It builds up their self-esteem. It helps them cope with problems that they're navigating through, maybe as an adolescence. It is such a big, they're less likely to engage in drugs. There's so much benefit to literally just having dinner with your family and talking with your family, not there scrolling through your timeline while you're having dinner. We have a rule. It's funny. My kid, I pulled out my phone to check an email, and one of my kids was like, "No technology at the dinner table." And immediately I put it down. I had to catch myself. And I was so appreciative of it because it's important to give your family the attention they need. So just something as simple as family dinners, but you don't hear these things being promoted in our culture. And it makes the biggest difference. But why is that? If you want me to go over the neuroscience, I'll give it to you. Because when you're connecting with other people, it induces oxytocin in your body, in your brain. And oxytocin is the love chemical. Oxytocin is that part of you that feels love, that part of you that feels supported and connected. And it's an essential part of your overall well-being. We all have 4 main chemicals that promote our happiness and well-being. It's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And family gatherings, it does that. This is the reason why sometimes when you're homesick and you just get around your family, you feel so much better because you're filled with oxytocin. Some of you, you're not in a relationship and you're too isolated and you're not getting around enough community. And that's the reason why you feel the way that you feel, because relationships can hurt you, but they can very well heal you if you have the right relationships. So you have to analyze your relationships, because some relationships will boost your cortisol levels and they'll stress you out. And there are other relationships that once you're done speaking with that friend, and I'm not sure how many of you have that friend, everybody should have that one friend when they're going through life's challenges, they have that one friend that they can count on to help them. And maybe it's that boost of oxytocin to just have them feel a little bit more hopeful about their situation. But you have to shift your focus to something else. That's the idea. So when I go through stressful situations, oftentimes I'll put on an audio that is very uplifting and positive, or I'll start learning something new, because learning also triggers the dopamine inside of you, or serotonin that's produced. So that is something else that definitely helps with your situation. Whenever you find yourself in a state of anxiety, in a state of worry, it's because of what you're thinking about. Your body and brain are interconnected. So if you're thinking about depressing thoughts and worry and anxiety and anxious situations, the great teacher once said, "Do not be anxious for tomorrow will take care of itself." Timeless wisdom. Do not be anxious for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Think about that. So you have to shift your focus. Number 7 is adjust your diet, sleep, and exercise routine. Many times, because you're not taking care of your health, because you don't integrate self-care in your life, that's amplifying the worry. That's amplifying the anxiety in you, because you may have high levels of cortisol. And those high levels of cortisol are also influencing the quality of your thinking. So if your body is very acidic, if your body is in a sympathetic nervous state, then your thoughts are naturally going to be influenced. It's like, you ever notice that if you're probably just laying on a couch and you know that you should be you should be productive, you want to be productive, but then you start having depressing thoughts because you're on the couch. Why is that? because it's your physiology. You're in a very chilled, relaxed state in a sense, but your mind is telling you that no, you should be doing this, but instead you're doing this, and then you find these environments that are ultimately triggering you, because again, your body and brain are interconnected. So when it comes to your diet and your sleep and your exercise, so the quality of food, you are what you eat. There's a lot of truth to that statement. So the quality of your food is also altering the quality of your thinking. That's why I always reference Tupac's saying in his song, I believe it was the song Changes, and he talks about we have to change the way we eat, change the way we live, and change the way we treat each other. And for some people, they're probably like, why would he mention eat? It's because the food that you're putting in your body is affecting your life. You have to be mindful of what you are putting in your body. Garbage in, garbage out. Your sleep, if you're fatigued, if you're tired, if you're drowsy, that's also going to affect your thinking. And then exercise. Think about it. If you're out of shape, if you don't exercise, not only do you have the guilt for not taking care of your body or the shame for the way that you look, think about that. Think of the weight of that. The pain of discipline is not as heavy as the pain of regret, the pain of shame, the pain of guilt. What's heavier? You choose your pain. You choose your hard, because a very comfortable life is also very hard. So why wouldn't you just choose the hard that actually makes you feel fulfilled, that actually makes you feel significant? Both are hard. It's like if you want to be rich or you subscribe to the struggle bus, they're both hard lives. So why not go for the hard life where you have more options? That's the one thing that's this great paradox in society, is people think that being super successful is hard. We all have this idea that it's so hard to become successful. But isn't it true that it's also hard being broke? Isn't it true that it's also hard not being successful? Isn't it true that it's also hard just always not having enough to provide for your family, or being stressed out because you're always in survival mode? Isn't that also hard? So why not choose the hard that's actually going for your dreams and going for your goals? It's because it's unfamiliar. And you'd rather settle for the devil you know than the devil you don't. You'd rather settle for what's familiar and the pain that you know. It's why people stay in toxic relationships, because the uncertainty is what freaks them out. It's your survival mechanism. It's your body wanting to keep you safe. Like, no. This doesn't look familiar. You think in tribal times, if you went into uncharted territory, there could very well be a saber-toothed tiger there ready to devour you. But in these times, we still have that survival inclination. However, we're in different times. And chances are there's probably not going to be some wild beast there to devour you on the other side. So you have to embrace the fact that, hey, my body and brain is really trying its best to keep me alive. Thank you. But right now, you're not in this driver's seat. My soul is. And my soul is calling for a higher expression of itself. My soul is calling for alignment with God's will. My soul is calling for my destiny. So that's what I choose to follow. Okay? It's not to say that one is valid and one is not. One is more valuable and one is not. No, that's not what we're talking about. It's not to place judgment on yourself. It's more so to honor that aspect of yourself that's really just trying to keep you alive and saying, you know what? I get it. But today I don't choose to let the flesh rule my life. Today I choose to let my soul rule my life. And that's why it's so important to connect with your spirituality. Number 8, break down problems into smaller, manageable steps that can make them feel less overwhelming. So whatever problems you have, don't think about the 10 zillion things that you have to get done for the day. because that is what makes it overwhelming. Your brain, it compartmentalizes. So sometimes when you have too much on your plate, it's freaking you the hell out. It's overwhelming your brain. I can tell you, and I'm not sure if any of you can relate to this. Maybe the brothers can relate more than the sisters, but I I get super anxiety when my kids are just running around all in front of me. I think that women are more programmed to be nurturers. So women are a little bit better than men at this. But can anybody relate to that? Like your kids cause you anxiety? It's like they're just being kids, but they're just doing the most. There's too much noise, too many voices, too much movement going on. And for me, it makes me so anxious when I'm in that environment and I'm like, go upstairs. Like y'all are doing the most right now. And I need you to go up that way I can calm myself down because I can feel this boiling up in me. And thanks, Didi. Didi says it'll get better after a while. I hope so, because with young kids, there's just a lot going on, especially with young boys. You can only imagine having 3 young boys all underneath the age 10, and it gets wild. And I have to catch myself sometimes, like, all right, y'all go upstairs. I need to just kind of do my thing. And it can get super, super overwhelming, especially if you have business to take care of. Like I can be on a call in an important business situation going on, and my kids are just being kids. And I'm immediately is like, oh no, there's too much going on. And I have to get myself out of that environment. And it's one of those things that again, you have to also understand that it's just your brain is like overwhelmed. There's too much going on for your brain. So that's the reason why you feel the way that you feel, and that's okay. All right. But breaking these things down into small steps. So oftentimes when I'm going through my prayer and meditation sessions, I'm just asking my creator for the next step. I'm not asking for a million things to know what to do. I'm just asking for the very next step. That very next step may be sending that email. That very next step may be just cleaning your home. That very next step may just be going to the gym. So super, super valuable to understand. And one of the things that I recommend for you, and one of the things that I've been recently implementing is, the quote or the teaching on not being anxious for tomorrow will take care of itself. This is really what helped me. I was really reflecting on that recently. And I came to the realization that 90% of what I worry about never happens. This is not helping me. In fact, it's hurting me. It's making me sick. It's not conducive for productivity. So I have to figure out a way to release this. So reminding myself that, okay, over 90% of these things that I'm worrying, they'll never happen. So let it go. Fear is false expectation appearing real. And not only that, is if you really reflect on just winning the day, and you really reflect on the day, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year, but just focus on the day. For a lot of you who worry about maybe around money, isn't it true that the vast majority of the time, your days are taken care of? You have enough food to eat. You have a roof over your head. Think about this. Have you ever witnessed any family member or friend in your lifetime that has starved to death? If you live in America, probably not. That's not really a thing in our culture. Don't get me wrong, there are people in the world that don't have enough food to eat, and some do starve to death. But when you really think about in our lifetime, you don't hear people passing away from that. So it's quite obvious that God is taking care of that aspect of our lives. You're going to have food to eat. Then think about this. A lot of the times, you may have people lose their home. You may have people have situations where their house gets foreclosed or they get evicted. But how many family members and friends that are literally sleeping on the streets, like nowhere to sleep? Don't get me wrong. There's a small percentage, I would say less than 1% of people in America, but you don't really see, like, you don't really, in some cities, don't get me wrong, there's homelessness and you see that. But if you think about the vast majority of your relationships, most people end up having a place to live. And when you think about just every day, day by day, is today going to be taken care of? Am I going to have enough food to eat? Am I going to have clothes on my back? Am I going to have shelter? This isn't the desert, y'all. We're not spending 40 years in the desert here with no resources. I mean, we are talking about modern day civilization where most of our needs are being met on a day-to-day basis. Yes, you may have certain things that you can't pay for. You may not be able to pay for that vacation or the private school or certain things that are luxuries in our culture, but the basic needs are being taken care of. Your day is being sufficiently provided for. So when you break down your life into just focusing on the day, it helps with the anxiety. It helps with the overwhelm because you say, you know what? I'm going to take it one day at a time. And today, this is what I'm up against, and I'm just going to focus on today. Because focusing on tomorrow is just not really helping. It's not helping anything. Now, of course, you should definitely take action on things that you can change and things that you can control. Whatever's in your locus of control or within the parameters of your control. However, the things that you can't control, let them go. That's the premise of Stoicism. Number 9 is seeking support from friends, family, or a professional that can be beneficial. I have a lot of people that hire me as a coach, literally just to help navigate through really, really stressful seasons of their lives, or maybe to have an ear to listen, someone to vent to, maybe to seek counsel. And just one coaching session, they feel like they can conquer life again. It happens all the time. So you may very well need to just seek professional help. It could be a therapist, it can be a coach, but find someone that you can speak to about whatever it is that you're going through. If you don't have the funds to be able to afford that, find someone in your family or someone in your friends that's very uplifting and encouraging. There are people out there. And last but not least is prayer and meditation. And the meditation could be mindfulness. Doesn't have to, I know, I'm always respectful of people on the Breakfast Club have different beliefs. And maybe you're not quite there and you're more agnostic or secular or whatever. And that's okay because, we all have our different paths, our own journeys. And you may be in that season where you may need more mindfulness than anything. And just taking time. This is not a religious thing or a spiritual thing. This is very scientific. When you put yourself in a mindfulness meditation, and there's tons of apps. There's like a really, really great app. I think Headspace is one of the apps, but there's lots of great apps out there that can play soothing sounds, right? That can just help calm you down. And again, bringing down the cortisol levels, boosting the serotonin levels that promote overall well-being. And prayer, sometimes just asking for help can be so beneficial. I know for me, one of the very first things that I do is I just go to my spirituality, and it's one of the best ways to help cope with worry, stress, anxiety. And there's just that part of you that knows God is going to take care of it. And it's such a great way to go about the challenges that life will present itself. So lastly, I just want to share this last tip. This is not one of the 10, but this is the last tip that has helped me over the years. And that's thinking worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. And sometimes thinking in worst case scenario, you start to realize that, you know what? Man, my ancestors had it way more hard. And this is not too bad. I'm not going to die here. I'm not going to be living on the streets here. I'm not going to starve here. I'm going to be okay. Yes, I may lose my job and I may be out of work for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month, but I will very well find another job. I may not be able to afford this and maybe lose that car, but that is the very worst case scenario. And sometimes putting myself in a space where I'm thinking about, and I know it sounds counterintuitive. You're like, oh, well, what you focus on expands, but no, that's not really what I'm talking about. Like amplifying or just intensifying the focus of it, but just being mindful that, hey, worst case scenario, if I don't pay the rent this month, okay, I'll have to move out. I may get evicted. I'll move in with a family member. I'll move in with a loved one. I'll go to a shelter, whatever. But I'm going to be okay. Yeah, I'm not going to die here because our body is saying death. Our body is saying this is danger. This is really bad because it's designed to keep us alive. So it may feel that way. But the reality is 9 out of 10 times, that's not what's going to happen. So you have to remind your body and brain, like, hey, worst case scenario, you're going to be okay. And that can most certainly help. It's been one of my greatest life hacks for any situation, even in business. Sometimes you may be in a business arrangement and you're like, okay, worst case scenario, all right, I don't get the contract. I don't sign the person up. I don't get the deal closed or whatever the case may be, but I will be all right. Life will move on. Okay. And it's important to take control over that perspective. So just to recap, again, a lot of these teachings on taking control over what you can control and putting your focus on that, that's very helpful. And break it down into small steps. Don't overwhelm yourself. That's the premise of Stoicism. It's literally just focusing on what you can control, letting go of the rest. And what you can control typically are things for that day. Don't be anxious for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Focus on that day. Focus on winning the day, one step at a time, one thing at a time, and this will help. And write down your worries and an action plan for that. So just to recap, what is Stoicism here? Stoicism is a comprehensive philosophical system with a range of teachings that provide guidance on how to live a virtuous, fulfilled life. Here are some key teachings of Stoicism. Number 1, virtue as the highest good. Stoicism teaches that the ultimate goal of life is to cultivate and embody virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. These virtues lead to eudaimonia, I believe it's pronounced, it's spelled Eudaimonia, a state of flourishing and well-being. So that's what that means. Really, really great aspect to Stoicism. Do good, die great is that slogan. Dichotomy of control. Stoicism, this is number 2, dichotomy of control. Stoicism emphasizes focusing on what is within our control, our thoughts, emotions, actions, and letting go of what is beyond our control. External events, outcomes, opinions of others, completely out of our control. So next up, we have number 3, which is emotions and apathy. Stoics advocate for cultivating apatheia, which I believe is pronounced. Stoics advocate for cultivating apatheia, which is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery over destructive passions. They teach that emotions are judgments and can be transformed through rational understanding. So one of the greatest Stoics, for those of you who are Star Trek fans, is Spock. And I believe I'm pronouncing the name right, but he's just super, super analytical, super logical. And he's known as like the archetypal Stoic, right? It's that very logical thinking, which can help in a lot of situations because when emotion is high, logic is low. Nature and reason. Stoicism aligns with nature and the natural order of the universe. Reason is considered the highest faculty of humans, and living in accordance with reason is essential for a harmonious life. Number 5, acceptance of fate. Stoics believe in accepting the inevitability of fate and external events by acknowledging that some things are beyond our control. We can achieve inner tranquility and peace. So that's a big part of it. Sometimes, whatever path God may put you on, it may not be necessarily what you want. There's nothing convenient all the time or comfortable about living in alignment with God's will. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes you're called to this path of greatness that requires you to be more, do more. And it can be a heavy burden to carry, but you have to take up your cross with dignity and honor and understand that this too shall pass, that life does get better after this. It's not going to last forever. So just to recap, the 5 tenets of Stoicism. Number 1, virtue is the highest good. Number 2, dichotomy of control. Number 3, emotions and apathy. Number 4, nature and reason. Number 5, acceptance of fate. So I will quickly just share with you guys. Hopefully this allows me to share. I just wanted to share with you guys that diagram here. So you should be able to see that. You can even screenshot it if you'd like. And I'll see if I can share it on the Knowledge and Inspiration page as well. So this is ultimately where I got this from. Okay, so next up, I want to go over a framework that I actually came across while doing my research on worry. And it's called the Worry Tree Method. And I feel that a lot of you will be able to get value from this. And this will help you kind of manage whatever worry you're going through in your life right now. And I can tell you right now, most people, our worries are universal. So I always say the number one demand in the world is the demand to make more money, because a lot of people stress about money. It doesn't matter where you fall on the socioeconomic spectrum. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or a little money, because many of you probably feel that when you get money, that the money stress goes away. No. It doesn't work that way. More money, more problems, as you oftentimes hear. What happens is there is something called the Parkinson's effect. And the Parkinson's effect states that the more money you make, the more money you spend. So you naturally will find things to spend the money on. And prime example, typically when people, let's say, boost their economic status, where now they're upper middle class. So I remember, for example, when I became upper middle class, and this is when I first started working as a captain, doing very well financially, making what doctors and lawyers were making in my early 20s. And I naturally just found things to spend money on. An expensive place in New York City, a BMW, lots of vacations, eating out every day. You find things naturally to spend money on. That's how this thing works for most people. The key really is to do your best to still live below your means if possible. Or you may have the mindset where I want to expand my means. It really there's 1,000 ways to score a goal here. It's really on what works for you. But for a lot of people, it can be helpful to still live below your means. So what I did was, originally, I had got a BMW in my early 20s. I had a really nice place in New York City, and I was taking the vacations. I ate out every single day. Pretty much for like over a decade. I would eat out every single day. Like that was my lifestyle for a long period of time. And I like to buy nice things. I believe in investing in quality, but I also understood that frugality is an essential component for entrepreneurship as well. You have to be very practical with yourself and sometimes set yourself up on a budget. There are seasons for budgeting. And you may very well have to cut back on some of those expenses. So I remember I went through a season when I first went full-time as an entrepreneur. I literally set a budget for myself, $10 a day. That was the very most that I can spend outside on food. $10 a day. Could you imagine that? Right? And for many, many years, I stayed with one vehicle. I paid off my vehicle and had no car payment. Literally up until this month, I pulled a brand new car out of the parking lot. That was my dream vehicle. And I just made a decision that it was time, right? So you have different seasons where different things work for you. So being frugal for many years of my life helped me. But then when it was time to level up and time to go for abundance and prosperity, being frugal may not be so helpful. So again, finding out what really works for you. But you can never go wrong with setting a budget. It's the numbers are the numbers. So moving forward, when it comes to having money, understand that if you're running a business, maybe you're running a very successful business, typically what will happen is like I have a friend, for example, one of my best friends, he runs a company and his average employee makes $80,000 a year. And his expense, like he got hit with an expense last month that was $17,000. Could you imagine, right? Your net worth is millions of dollars. However, the business that you're in is bleeding through money because that's the nature of the business. You have variable expenses. So although your stress may not be, how am I going to pay the rent or the mortgage or this car payment at the end of the month? Your stress may very well be, how am I going to pay all of my staff? Your stress may be, how am I going to follow through on these accounts payable and pay these people or these vendors or whoever that I owe money? Those are different kinds of problems. That's why the saying always remains true. Be careful what you wish for, because you may wish to have that successful, thriving business, but then fail to realize that businesses are cyclical and winter is inevitable. The winter is coming, whether you choose to believe that or not. It is coming. I just have never, you know, oftentimes we get all caught up in this new age thinking that, oh, you know, what you focus on expands. There's some truth to that. But well, you know, it's also true that I find to be the case. Every single successful person that I know has gone through trials and tribulations. No positive thinking has kept anyone exempt from going through things. I've never seen so much positivity, so much positive thinking, so much affirmations where you're just exempt from all of your problems. There's no amount of affirmations that you can say that's going to keep you exempt from going through what you're going to have to go through. So the idea is not to eliminate struggle from your life. I don't want to eliminate struggle from my children's lives. I just want to teach them how to struggle well. Don't ask to eliminate all the struggle in your life, because how can you grow? How can you accumulate wisdom? How can you appreciate the journey without that struggle? But pray to be able to struggle well. Pray to be able to handle that load. Like sometimes when I think of I think in very abstract terms sometimes. So I'll think about the burdens of my life as a cross, and I'm taking up my cross. I'm bearing my cross. That is the burden of living in this third dimensional reality. That's earth for you. We come here to work. We come here to grind. We come here to preserve and manage the land, right? And everybody that I know is working. They're working. They're going hard. They're doing what they have to do, and we all have our load to carry. And I look at the cross as sort of like a metaphor or symbolic for the stresses and anxiety and worry and all of these things that we go through that feel heavy on us. And what helps is not necessarily letting the cross down, because let's be real, that's an inevitable part of life. You're going to have a burden to carry. But if you can focus on building you up, building your capacity to be able to handle that burden, that stress, that's the idea. In the words of Jim Rohn, he'll oftentimes say, don't ask for less problems. Ask to be more. Ask to be better. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. That's the idea. Imagine you're just constantly wishing it were easier. How could you ever accomplish anything significant if it was always easy for you? Wish to be better. Expand your capacity. When you get older, as you get older in life, for those of you who are young, understand that the problems don't go away. For those of you who are older, everybody here who's 40 plus, have the problems ever gone away? Drop an N in the comment thread if the problems never went away. Drop an N, capital N specifically, if them problems kept coming. As the years go by, do the problems keep coming, right? Drop an N. They never go away. But what happens is you become wiser. You become stronger. You're learning how to handle these things. The problems don't go away. Wisdom is knowing how to avoid certain problems in your life, problems that aren't necessarily useful for you, because some of us go through unnecessary problems that we bring onto ourselves. So that's what wisdom is, the avoidance of problems that don't necessarily help you. Give me problems that promote me. Give me problems that take me to the next level. Don't give me those petty problems. So throughout life, as you start to go through life, again, even if you're making more money, understand that that's not going to solve your money problems, because you're just going to have more challenges, more responsibility. So you need to work on your capacity for what you can be responsible for, because responsibility, as I oftentimes mention, is nothing more than your ability to respond. Your ability to respond to that worry, to that stress, to that anxiety. How comfortable can you be with being uncomfortable? How comfortable can you be with living on the edge of that comfort zone, living in uncharted territory and navigating through that? So as we move forward here, I just wanted to share with you guys this framework that's referred to as the worry tree method. So this is what you do. For all of you who got some problems, I would assume 99% of y'all do, right? Let's be real. If y'all got some problems, drop a one. I got me some problems. I got me a heavy cross, and many times I'm like asking for my savior, like, help me carry this cross. I need you by my side. I need you to help me carry, because this cross is crossing right now. Like it is one heavy burden that I am carrying right now, and I don't have the capacity to do it on my own. I need you. God, I need you in my life right now. This is a lot. This is a lot, and I need you side by side with me. I can't do it alone. This is weighing on my soul. This is the hardest thing that I've ever had to endure, and I need you with me. How could you live a life where you don't have God? I don't understand how people do it. How are you doing this on your own? How in the world are you managing? How are you dealing with all of that stress on your own? We can't do it on our own. Like, I know some of you feel like you got it all figured out on your own. You will reach a point in time in your life, especially if you're on the path that's in alignment with your destiny, especially if you're on a path of greatness, if you're on your hero's journey, you will need help. You will need that help. And for me, feeling like I have that support to carry that burden with honor and dignity, and knowing that I'm divinely supported, because you are. But you have to pray for that relationship, meditate for that relationship, not just for the request, right? We all have requests. How many people actually get all of their requests? It's very rare that people get all of their requests as they want it right then and there. How many people are praying for a financial breakthrough that don't get it, or praying for healing and they don't get it? Because there's two different wills. You have your will, you have God's will. Pray for relationship, meditate for relationship, having that relationship to help you just bear the stresses of life, to help you to help you push forward with everything that you're currently dealing with. Some of you have gone through some of the toughest things in life. You've gone through some of the most difficult situations that you could possibly imagine, things that are far more difficult than anything that I've ever experienced in my life. But you have to tap into your spirituality to feel supported. Okay, so with this method, the worry tree method is what it's referred to. If you look at it, it's the first thing is notice the worry. Notice it. Don't judge it. Just notice it. That's a big part of it. You guys can screenshot this for your own reference as I jump back to my video. Okay, so notice the worry. The second aspect is, what am I worried about? What am I really worried about? And write it down. Like we mentioned earlier, journal about it. Yesterday, I took notes. Just wrote down all my worries, everything that I got going on that I'm like worrying about. The third thing is this worry about a current problem or hypothetical situation? Can I do anything about this? So it's analyzing, it's putting yourself on the logical side and genuinely asking yourself, okay, is this today's problem, or is this next month's problem? Or do I have to do something today to avoid what may possibly happen next month? But you will find that the vast majority of the stuff that you worry about are not things that are pressing that have to happen that day. Maybe they are, but focus on what you actually can control or what you can do anything about. So this is where the tree gets interesting because it splits off. If you look at it, you'll notice it splits off. On the left side, you have the list of hypothetical or things that you can't do anything about. And the slogan for that, the motto for that is bless and release it. Bless and release it. It's okay. It's God's will. Nothing I can do about it. Right? On the right side are current problems or things that you can do something about. So problems for the day, things that you need to tackle for the day. And remember, one step at a time. Because the next step, whether you're on the left or the right side, if you notice, the next step is let the worry go. If you can't control it, just let it go. Bless and release. But on the other side is make an action plan. Have a map. A map is a massive action plan for your destination, for what you need to do. You can have a game plan because sometimes what brings us overwhelming anxiety is the feeling of not having control. Think about that. A lot of what causes us anxiety and stress and overwhelm and worry are things that we feel we don't have control over. And it's very scary for human beings to feel like they don't have control. So you want to make a massive action plan because when you write down all the things that you can do, you take back your power. You take back your control. You start to realize like, oh, I actually can control a lot of this. I actually do have the power to change this. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming as well. You may have that map. You may have that massive action plan, and it starts to get a little overwhelming because I got to do this, I got to do that, I have to do that. And that's when the serenity prayer pretty much kicks in and really benefits you. Having the courage, praying for the courage to change the things that you can't. And the serenity to accept the things or change the things that you can, the courage to change the things that you can, the serenity to accept the things that you can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's the premise of that prayer. Praying for help to carry that load, but one step at a time. Don't think about the 10 steps. Think about the next step. Don't look at that entire staircase up to the end of the destination. Just look at the next step. What's more overwhelming? The 1,000 steps that you have to climb or that one little step, that next step? It's far less overwhelming to just focus on that next little step. And once you make that action plan, you have to decide what, when, and how. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How you're going to do it. The how is a really important one because if you know that you have to do something difficult, then having the how can be really valuable because maybe you have to do something that requires a lot of willpower, a lot of motivation. And you have this willpower and this motivation that is there. And perhaps you drink a cup of coffee before doing that. Perhaps you listen to some music to really get yourself elevated. Perhaps you take control over your body. You go for an exercise, get some endorphins kicking in. You go out and get some sunlight, get some serotonin, boost yourself up. A body in motion stays in motion. So that may be the how. Maybe you do it at a specific time. Maybe you don't do it first thing in the morning and you sort of get acclimated to your environment and you do it later on in the day when you have the most energy and momentum. And the what. But having the what, the when, and the how is going to give you a lot more clarity and feel. It's like perceived control is correlated with happiness. So it's going to give you that feeling of having more control. And if you can't control it, change your focus or your attention. Don't focus on that. Turn the other cheek because focusing on that is going to stress you more out. Turn the other cheek to the things that you actually can control. Then as we go down the tree, you'll find that it splits off once again, one last time, to things that you can do now and things you can do later. So perhaps the things that you can change are not things that you're going to do today. So schedule your worry, if you will. If you're going to worry about it, if it's going to cause you a lot of stress because you know you have to get these things done, but guess what? At least they're in your control, and you schedule it for a later time. Say, I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm not going to be anxious for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Today, win the day by doing the things that you know you need to do today. And a lot of those things, I like to change the language of needing to do for getting to do. It's a blessing to be alive. It's an honor to be alive, to be able to have another breath in your lungs, and to be able to even have a healthy body. For those of you who have your health, it's a blessing. So these are the challenges of life, and you're in this game to be on this grand adventure, this quest. I know it seems very heavy, it seems very daunting sometimes. Sometimes it's very just heavy, but there's also a lot of beautiful elements to this life. If you're going through hell, keep on going, because on the other side, there's it can be heaven on earth. There is something greater, right? So just keep pressing on. That's the idea. So for the things that are in the now category, do it. Secondly, let the worry go, because now you're taking action. And then also change your focus or attention. So again, don't focus on the things that you can't control, and change your focus so that you actually have that motivation. There's this app called Pep Talk that I really love, and I pay a yearly subscription, and it's motivational videos from people who are ultimately on their path of greatness, or maybe they've done some great things in their lives, and they just share motivational talks, interviews, snippets, speeches, all of that. So for the things that are later, schedule it. That way, again, you feel like you have control. Schedule those things and let the worry go. And again, change the focus or attention. If you notice, changing the attention and the focus is sort of like the common theme here. Whether it be things that you can control, things that you can't control, you have to be mindful at what you're giving your attention to, what you're giving your thoughts to. It's important to understand. Again, lastly, your body and brain are interconnected. So your body's going to influence your thinking, and your thinking is going to influence your body, meaning the emotions that you feel. So whenever you find, and I want to break this down because I know we do cover a lot of spiritual aspects of personal development here on the Breakfast Club, but I want to break it down in a very practical way, a very scientific way. So understand that there are chemicals in your body that bring happiness and a sense of well-being, and there are chemicals in your body that bring stress and overwhelm, like cortisol. The happy chemicals, which I mentioned earlier, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, these things get produced by certain patterns of behavior. So if, for example, you go out in nature and you get some sunlight, that sunlight induces serotonin, which is predominantly, it comes from your gut. About 95% of serotonin is produced in your gut. This is why taking care of your microbiome, your gut health, is so important. Okay? Hopefully you guys are with me so far. Another thing is dopamine. Dopamine is when you're motivated and you have that in you to take action, that is dopamine. That is the chemical in your body or brain that is getting you to take action. And you can get dopamine in a lot of different ways. You could even get it, hell, from eating chocolate. Eating dark chocolate can give you some dopamine. You can get dopamine from listening to certain music, but getting your body in motion. That's what happens. So listening to motivational talks, and maybe you're listening to an audio that's centered around personal development. Maybe you're learning something new that induces dopamine. When you have oxytocin, that's feeling love in your life, connected, social bonding, all of that. When you make love to your significant other, there's a lot of chemicals that are happy chemicals that are getting produced. And that's why it feels so incredible. So it's very scientific. A lot of it is neuroscience. A lot of it is biochemistry. And if you understand how to take control over this beautiful piece of technology, this meat sack of chemicals, you can better take control over your life. So again, endorphins. That's runner's high. That's what masks pain. So whenever you feel pain in your body, and let's just say you get endorphins from intimacy, you get endorphins from working out. When you get that runner's high and you feel amazing, that's endorphin. So that's why exercise is important. It's all rooted in science. It's very practical. And the thing about spirituality is you're connecting. So those oxytocin levels, that serotonin that you feel, serotonin is a mood stabilizer. So it brings down the cortisol. The serotonin goes up, and now your immune system is probably it's properly working. And this is why people who go through a lot of stress in their lives, they end up getting chronic illnesses and all kinds of diseases and ailments later down the road, because their immune system, their body's ability to fight off dis-ease is constantly being compromised because of the stress. Some of y'all are worrying about diet and exercise. Stress will kill you faster than anything else. You should, in the words of John F. Kennedy, the only thing that you should fear is fear itself, because fear causes stress. And stress compromises your immune system's ability to fight off this disease. This is so important to understand. That I can, if I went over the statistics of how many people will, for example, have cancer in their lifetime, they're staggering. And a lot of it is centered around not only the diet, not only the exercise, but stress. It's stress. You have to be careful with this, because a lot of people, it's sad that we even have to manage stress in this society, but this is a big part of life today in 2024. This is just what it is. So learning how to properly deal with the stress and cope with the stress and cope with the worry, and hopefully these tools and these strategies were very useful for you, useful enough to the point where even if it doesn't eradicate it completely from your life, I don't even know if you want to eradicate it completely from your life, because again, that stress, sometimes there's good stress that it compels you to take action. Sometimes it helps you even appreciate and grow and become wiser as a person, right? So it's not to eliminate it completely, but it's to expand your capacity to manage it properly, so that it's not destroying you, so that you can properly cope with it in a way that's conducive to you living who you're supposed to be and living out your dreams and your goals and all of these different things. So I hope that this Breakfast Club session was insightful for you. I hope that you got value. Maybe you got one or two tools or strategies. Take it, embody it, practice it, teach it. And you'll find that throughout the course of your life, this will be one of the most valuable things that you'll ever learn. Just learning how to properly deal with the worry, because over 90% of what you worry about is not even going to happen. Bless and release it. Focus on what you can control, and your life will just be drastically different, and it'll be a lot better. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. God bless you all. Breakfast is officially served. I will drop my Calendly link. If you've never gotten a coaching session from me, I offer complimentary coaching sessions. This is my way of serving the community. And if you've never gotten a coaching session from me, feel free to book on my Calendly, and only book it if you can 100% be there. No flaking out at all. My time is super precious, but I would love to connect with some of you guys and help you with whatever it is that you have going on. I'm going to share it here on the Zoom, and later on, I will share it on the Facebook. So if you all don't mind, it will be greatly appreciated. I have a new podcast. I have a few podcast episodes that have gotten released. And if there's any way that you can thank me, it would most certainly be leaving a review, leaving a comment. I know for some people, they're asked, they may ask from time to time, how can I support you in your work? I have an Instagram subscription. You can always go for that. I'm also putting together my broadcast channel for Instagram, where I give you guys different life coaching tips throughout the course of the week. So you may get an invite from me on Instagram. Follow me if you don't, at The World Traveler, and I'll be seeing you guys next week. Take care. God bless. Breakfast is officially served. Thanks again for tuning into this episode. It would mean the world to me if you can follow, subscribe, share, or even leave a review. I look forward to putting out more content, and we'll see you on another episode.